far, what has happened? Up to chapter 17, we have come to know that the prisoners of war are being taken to Kabul by the soldiers who have sacked their village, one of the Hazara villages, where Gulbegum comes from. And this is her story, written by LILLIAS Hamilton. And I should appreciate all those of you who are able to converse, communicate in English. This has some merit in literary merit, I mean. That's also worth appreciating, and also being part, though it's a fiction. A Vizier's Daughter is a fiction, a novel written by her, and but it is inspired by the real events of the Hazara War, and that's a tale of that war in 1890s onward. For the last 130 years, war and migration is the destiny of the Hazaras. So what has happened so far? Tabal skarsh da ki dazu campi ki qamandan reikat ki boro yani 6 nafar azi jami 20 دخترو 6 دنيشر بريهم بيارو كي ونجي يقول بيجيم نما يخايا ونجي ورا شركي از شان زو تايا قماندان ودختري وزيره ومقت خبر ندري كي كرنل فرهاد شاه مرة پسند كده اگر خبر شونه و دیگه خودت میشناسی نفره قماندان دیگه وزی باور منه ایرایی منه طرفی قلعه کرنل فرهاد شاه که خودش ده جنگه گلبیگم مرسه ده اینج دی هیچ کس خبر نداره که یندنیه خو نگفته کس دیگه. What happens there is the story of chapter 18, an Afghan garden house. یک گلستان، باغ، گلزار، چمن. The soldier had said it was not far to Colonel Farhad Shah's garden house, but though the travelers had started shortly after dawn, the sun was already low on the horizon when the little party halted in front of a heavy door, the only apparent entrance to several acres of land. Enclosed by a high, thick mud wall, Gulbegum's heart stood still. Once inside those walls, what chance would the bravest have of escape? 3 times the soldier thundered with the butt end of his rifle before his summons met with any response. Do, do, do. And each time he cursed, not the man who should have admitted him, and did not, but his father and his grandfather and his wife and other relations' forefathers. But padar kalane padar lanat in the usual Afghan style. At last, an old man appeared in the doorway. At last, an old man appeared in the doorway in a state of fury equal to that of the soldier. And in his turn commenced the same style of greetings. What sense have you that you thunder at my master's door in that manner? He asked. Are we all your servants that you expect admission the moment you choose to rap at our door? Son of a low-born barber that you are. Cursed be your father. Then, why did you keep us waiting? Asked the soldier angrily. Are we dogs that we should be left standing outside the gate in this way, waiting your good pleasure? See, I bring you a new mistress, the last who had found favor in your master's eyes, and she is travel-stained and weary. A nice story she will have to tell your master of the way in which you received her. एक दफा खबर सुना कि तू चतुर गुल बेगम रेंज रिसीव कदे खुशामद गुफ्ते बाज दर तू ये तर्स में दिया. I was at my prayers. Blasphemer, lamazap. The old man said more quietly, noticing the woman on her horseback. Could you not have guessed the cause of the delay? And have waited a little more patiently. The soldier, sending that he, or rather the rider, had made some impression on the irate old man, was about to add a good deal more. Did ki alikam da alam day darban me khas kam ek bas shuru kan jaye ji bas. Gul Begum herself interposed. Enough, she said. Baskin, now that we know you were at your prayers, there is nothing more to say. It was not so very long that we had to wait after all. Khaira, hogali mo fahmidik to the sar namaz budi, alam dirnash ta khaira. Who are you? The doorkeeper asked quite civilly. Shuma kimi bashin? Noticing the air of authority with which she spoke. And why do you come here? I am the daughter of the Vizier, Ghulam Hussain, she said quietly, and have been chosen by your master and sent here by the order of the commandant of the camp over yonder. Camp ki utaraf hasta commandant azuri ke damoranj bakhasti AMIR aghaijmo, indicating the direction from which she had come. We have ridden all day to get here, tamam roz ra rafte mo, and are tired and hungry. It is passing strange, Ajibala, the old man said, eyeing her. You are likely girl enough, but I have no orders about you whatsoever, and hardly know what to say. Almayran mchibuguma. Muraj kas na gufta kasam deniye kas raftaniye. You are not likely to, the soldier again interrupted, if you don't go to the right source for your information, if you choose to address yourself to me instead of to the woman, I might be able to give you the information of which you do not seem to be possessed. Hazir cheez khabar na dareed na fahmi. I have a letter here for your master from my commandant, which will explain everything there is to know about these women and why are they sent here. It appears that your master saw this girl in her Hazara home and wished to have her. She was, however, taken prisoner by mistake, along with the whole tribe from among the mountains, and brought into our camp. So when the commandant found out who she was and what the colonel's intentions were regarding her, he sent her straight on here with these 3 women who are to wait on her and be her servants. Do you see, old owl? Then come inside and leave off these evil cursing ways of yours. The doorkeeper replied indignantly, don't show at every breath how low your origin happens to be. ده هر نفس تو یک نشان میده چی قد کم زاد بد زاد است لعنتی بر داخل. It is not necessary. Any fool can see that at a glance before you ever open your lips. So saying, he unbolted the other half of the heavy teak wood door and admitted them to a scene the memory of which never passed Gul Begum's mind as long as she lived. हम दरगाह के वाज शुद्ध में गुल बेगम के था कि जिंदा بود و دیاد چی بود منظر و گلزاری افغان. It was only a garden planted both with fruit trees and flowers. am gul shi am meve shi am sabze shi am chamandi shi. But the girl had never seen a garden before. وخ باغ دوش نکرده گل بیگم زندگی خود زو کویستانا. And unlike her more unimpressionable companions, it affected her deeply. ونخشندن دغمش نمو بوده میتر خو زیر تاثیر شده مگری رو بیخی گرفته گل بیگم رای باغ. For hours, for days indeed, she had been walking along a burning stony plain. از سارای داغ پایلودم دو. With here and there at considerable intervals a stream. که مرافتی تا اوده یگو چشمه میرسید. The borders of which had been planted with occasional groups of mulberry trees, which had offered her pleasant shade and a sense of peace. But this was quite different. بگید چشمه درختای تو سایه‌های تو پایدمنی ها و چشمه یخ خود جای خوب مگری دیگه چیزه. It was a fairyland. Paristan but Paristan. The sun was just setting. غروب میشه در آفتاب. And spreading a flood of golden glory over everything. هر چیز طلایی شده. Showing up in strong relief the graceful forms of the young almond trees on which the fruits was already beginning to show. خصوصاً درخت بادام. که بتاعي تازه سوس دبور ده. Ready تقريباً نصف ready area. While beyond them and forming a magnificent background stood great spreading sycamores, so old that no one knew who had planted them. درختای عظیم الجثه که زمانهای خدا خبر کی اونها رو کشت کرده. In the front, at her feet, were sweet-scented English annuals, Momin. And all around her, the atmosphere was laden with the perfume of the delicate pink rose, my favorite, which the famous attar is extracted from. Arakhi gulab ki namaya. Skudam gulab unzu gulabi. She drew a long breath and turned to address the doorkeeper. Rukhsun darban kat, but stopped again, full of wonder at the overhanging vines. The garnered apple trees forming strange and grotesque shapes and stretching out weird and ghostly arms in the rapid increasing shapes and shades. Oh, you had better come to the house. By Dakhili Khanaburin, the old man said, the ladies will arrange something for you tonight. Tomorrow, doubtless, we shall hear from the colonel what his wishes are regarding you. Tasubara farmani Colonel Saibram malum manim shumum shawam bashin. If there is no room in the house, I can put a tent up for you tomorrow. But for tonight, you will have to manage it as best as you can. Gulzari kinim shaw. You were not expected. بخدا مو خبر نبودی که شما میایین. Give me some receipt. The soldier said, that I may show the commandant that I have discharged my duties and have landed the women here safely. در شما خیر خریدی رساندم مرز رسید چی بیدین. You get nothing from me. ما رسید ندارم. You cursing fool. احمق دیوانه. The old man said testily, go, make what explanation you best can. What care I what your commandant has to say to you? مرکار نیک تو قط قمدان چیز مگی برگم شدنیش. Have you a slip of paper? Gulbegum asked, and a pen and ink? I can give you a few lines to let your officer know that I have reached my destination safely. That's all you want, isn't it? The man could neither read nor write himself, but he carried in his pocket the ordinary Afghan pen box, containing also a tiny bottle of ink, and now produced both it and a scrap of paper. One of his duties was to wait upon his superior officer, and he often had to provide him with writing materials on an emergency. Dipping the pen in the bottle, it was found to be quite dry. But that in no wise nonplussed the soldier, he walked a few steps to the water channel and, dipping his hand in, poured a few drops on the dried up particle in the bottom of the bottle, then shook it. Again Gulbegum dipped in her pen and now was able to write. That is the way with Afghan ink. It is like a sort of paint that only needs water to be added to it to make it fluid and ready for use. 3 lines were all she wrote, then read them to the man. Greetings to the commandant of the camp which I left at daybreak this morning. May God give you happiness. I have reached Colonel Farad Shah's garden in safety, and I am thoroughly satisfied with the conduct of the 3 men who acted as my guides and protectors during the journey. Tashakkur Gulbegum. The doorkeeper took the paper from the girl's hand, looked at the writing and then at her dress, but failed to reconcile the two. Then handed the paper to the soldier. It's a deal more than you deserve. Ma, he said, you have done your duty. You had better go back to your master. No, that I will not. Yanichi, Boru, the soldier said, is this Afghan hospitality? When we have walked from dawn, asar subh ki moh mit harakat kade imsha mai ami Afghan mehman nawazi hai. You must give us some supper and a bed. We will be off at daybreak tomorrow. We cannot start tonight. No. Mohim shoye jai na more. Rafta nemituni. The old man thought a moment, and in the pause Gulbegum advanced a step towards him. Give them some food, she said gently. 2 of the men, at any rate, have not offended you. So do not punish all for the sake of one. He looked at her as many others had looked, recognized the something that they too had recognized, and gave way. Wazir Tasir was Hussain. Sit down there then, he said, and I will go and see what can be done in the haram for these new arrivals. Come along with me. He went on. As he proceeded, The women in the direction of the house, which was protected by a second enclosing wall. Idakhili harama. Haram sarai. Naam-e Khuda, what are we to do with them? The girl educated, sorry, I apologize. I have missed a paragraph. Tell the Bibi that 4 women selected by Agha have been sent here from the camp, he said to a slave girl who met the party on the threshold. Naam-e Khuda, what are we to do with them? The girl ejaculated. We are already so crowded, we have to sleep like sheep in a yard. Then turning to look at them, Hazaras, she said, oh, they can sleep anywhere. Put them in the stable. Azraya, kho khair dam jai malanu jai misha. Peace, girl, the old man said angrily. Qarabishi, and be more careful with that tongue of yours, or you may find yourself without it someday. You don't know what you are talking about. Take my message to the Bibi and tell her that one favored by Farhad Shah with free attendance has arrived, and that a room must be cleared for them in the house. It can be quite small, they are only 4, and coming late at night must be satisfied with what they can get. The girl disappeared and returned presently. Bibi says she has had no orders about the arrival of any woman. And that if you wish to house them, you must house them yourself. The old man was very wroth. Tell your mistress that I say the women are to be received and properly treated, fed and clothed, or it will be the worse for her when Agha returns. Then he stooped and whispered something in her ear. The girl glanced at Gul Begum, who, almost unconscious of what was going on around her, was still gazing at the beauties of a semi-tropical garden in full bloom. Gul Begum gum. The gigantic scarlet briar roses and the brilliant yellow and orange ones a little further on, and above all, the beautiful spreading trees in which the turtle doves were cooing one another to sleep. She had never seen the like, never dreamt of such a glory of color. Almost in equal wonder, the slave girl gazed for a moment at the travel-stained new arrival. It was not her beauty that impressed her, nor yet her size. There were plenty of girls as tall in the haram. She could have said what it was. Perhaps it was the fearlessness that comes of freedom. تو که آزاد منش بودی تو یک انتر بیخوفی داری گرد سنسی insecurity در تو معلوم نمیشه. The possession of a soul that could forget the physical discomforts of its shell in the contemplation of the simple beauties of nature. که گلازه اما خود روح آزاد داشته باشی که دمزی حال اسیری هم تو بیتنی که زیبایی طبیعت را متر گمش نمانیش گلبه گمش نمانیش. Perhaps it was her dignity. Gulbegum was quite unconscious of having produced any impression. But the girl went quickly into the house to return with a more civil message. The women must wait in the enclosure and some food would be sent to them while a room was being cleared for their reception. It was late, the Bibi would see them on the morrow. That's well, the doorkeeper said, addressing them. Then in an undertone which obviously was meant to create a lasting impression. I have done my best for you. But for me, you would have had to sleep out in the dew tonight. This is my You will not forget to recall my services when Agha returns. He will be back in about a week. I expect. But really, we never know. Especially since the war began. Then he retired and the women were left alone, or at least temporarily alone, for presently one woman came up and then another, just to have a look at them and then pass on. I wish they would bring in some food. I feel as if my thirst could never be assuaged. And she stooped and drank some of the water from the stream that ran through the enclosure. There's better, she said with a sigh. This Farad Shah must be a rich man. My goodness, look at this garden. Look at his house. And look at his servants. What money he must have to clothe and feed them all. God granted that we may have peace here, her mother said. And then the food was brought, one large dish of mutton and rice with cranberries mixed up in it. Palau. And two small one containing two different kinds of green vegetables. That's all that is ready just now, the girl said. It's not much, but you were not expected. A very dirty cloth was laid upon the ground and the woman sat around it hungrily. None of them had had such a meal in all their lives. So well cooked, so delicate in flavor, and yet the girl who brought it had made a sort of apology for it. As though it had been insufficient. I'd stay here forever and work fingers to the bone to get such good food. Halima remarked. When first she paused in her endeavor to satisfy her hunger. What rice? Her sister-in-law went on. They must have some different way of growing it here. I have never seen the like. The two girls had less to say, but both ate greedily. They had had nothing but a piece of bread to eat since about the hour the night before. After the meal was over, it was long before anyone came near them. The night was growing chilly, and the moon stood high in the heavens when the slave girl they had first seen on their arrival came towards them. What? Still sitting here? She said, how is this? Naam-e Khuda. You must have been forgotten. There are too many mistresses in this house and too few servants. Inj beguma kheli ziyada. Doktor kargarij niye inj na? God knows what it all leading us to. Fine trouble there will be when Agha comes home. Here, come with me. Come with me. I told a lot of girls to clear out a little room at the side for you, but I don't expect they have done it. The wanderers rose with some difficulty. They had walked far and had fallen half asleep in the damp night air. But they managed to follow their guide through a doorway and up a few steps, then into a little room, but the guide stumbled as she entered. And an angry, sleepy voice called out, "Here, what are you doing? Look where you're going. Am I a dog that you walk over me?" For answer, the speaker got a smart rap on the side of the head. What are you doing here? Tripping me up, the new arrival said. What business have you here at all? Didn't I tell you you were to find quarters elsewhere? And leave this room for the strangers. There is nowhere else to go. There is not an inch to sleep out in here. Then go and lose yourself. The woman replied, but clear out of here at once. Is there anyone else here? Yes, 2 or 3. Are we all to turn out for these accursed strangers? Do what you are told. The woman, who was evidently in authority, replied sharply, and take these other women with you now. Be sharp, zut, 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 or I'll get the stick to you. Slowly and sulkily they rose, taking their mats on which they had been lying and their pillows with them. Cursed be their fathers. But that is not lanat. The slave girl went on as they retired. Not one of them is worth the food she eats. Stay here and I will fetch you some bedding that will do for tonight. I shan't be a moment. And she disappeared to return with a huge bundle which she threw down on the ground, leaving the new arrivals to make the best they could of it. It was more than they had seen for many a long day. In almost less time than could be credited, they were all 4 sound asleep. That brings us to the chapter 18's end, my dear audience. They could be any age, there's no age discrimination. Magar guftum ki the kulli Hazara communities around the world are jai ki the online Mechidtv ra darshum present mukuni shmo da zidastani Afghan garden am imroz rasidin Gulbegum ram dar mishnasin manzar wazi mushan 1891 shirqam bod 1890 ki jang shuru musha hamla shuru musha asira awarda musha as kuja awarda musha shirqam یاد و خاطره های درد های گذشته و کنه تا که دردای نو نیانه امور هیل کنیم بایی و نگفتن مانا که انتی هزار پاینیرز لایبرری ریلیتد تو زو چگار یک بندوبست کده بود یک برنامه را قل جناب موسی در سید آباد کیورو فرزندی ارجمندی legendary marksmanship in the British India جناب گردیلی صبدار گردیلی کے فرزند جناب موسی گردیلی in سید آباد very old خیلی ضعیف شده دوستایی که میشناسن ارتباط کنن استفاده کن خیلی مگمان نخواندم زیاد البته از لحاظ حافظه هنوزم خوبه گوشی قدشیمش ضعیف شده او را که رفتیم امرای چگر و دو جان و جگر یک ملاقات کردیم در خانه زنا اونا هم یک چند قطره و دیدامات که داستانی پانیر شد که چی شدی کلپس شدی استاندرد ای علم ای جنده چرا شیشت ای نظم و ترتیب و اراده و استعداد و قوت که بعد از نسل کشی 1893 وقتی که ایتر کردارها ایتر شخصیات و افرادی که دوباره در طرف زندگی موران و یک معیار قایم منن که تا امروز ما را هنوز درکش نداریم چون که ما discontinue شدیم. This is what I'm talking to the Bakuls, you know. We have been discontinued from the past and we have forgotten the lessons of the past. We have not learned. Things are happening is repeating. And we are playing victim. We can't play victims. Maybe we are gardeners in a war. But, as Nowroz Zawar says, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Thus we say, Haikido Nowroz Zawar. Catch up next one. Thank you, Chagar.